cloud. So that is one of the points of order that I wanted to go over before we get into the session completely. That this session is being recorded so that other people can view it after the fact and that you can view it after the fact. If you have any questions, I'm breaking for questions kind of halfway through and then at the end. And if you have any questions, please raise them via the chat window. And my partners in crime here will help gather them. And when we break for questions, they will ask them. Before we get to the end and the final questions, we are going to have a little section that I call Tales from the Front. And what I'm going to be asking is if people have any kind of stories to tell relating to their experiences with data governance, right? Because we want this to be a community event. Please raise that through the chat and just say, I have a story to tell. And I would greatly appreciate that. So what is data governance? Well, I'm not going to read the slide. This is from Gartner Research. But I do want to highlight the words data assets and aligns with overall company objectives. So data is an asset to your company. If you're not monetizing it, you're probably looking at monetizing it. And so data is something that your company finds very important, most likely. What does data governance do? Well, and I know this is a pretty busy slide. What we do with data governance is we take what the experts know and we distribute it to people who need to know it. You all know subject matter experts on particular data, right? Somebody who knows exactly how to put in that exact right query to get what you're looking. What we're going to be doing is tapping these people and getting some of their knowledge into a data glossary so that other people can get at it. We know we'll never be rid of the subject matter experts. We're always going to need those, but this will help people find the data and also figure out how to properly use it. And the other thing that we want to do is define it and metrics as well in a way that everybody can understand. The next thing revolves around security. So an important part of data governance is ensuring that people are using the data properly and not misusing it or sending it to some place that shouldn't have it. The next thing that it does is establish rules for the quality of the data. So there are data governance tools out there, which I will not mention because there's a ton of them. And they will take these rules and execute them against the data, and they'll actually provide a data report card. The next thing it'll do is take care of the reference data in your organizations, your product codes, departments, job codes, and we're going to get into these a lot more as we go on. And we're also going to help resolve those metric wars. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Wait, my number is 5.7. No, you're wrong. My number is 5.52. So let's talk about data as an asset. All assets need to be managed, right? Amazon Prime, they have a fleet of trucks and you know that they have maintenance facilities for them. Now, this may sound like a very daunting task because right now you're thinking about, oh my gosh, all the, I have a PeopleSoft implementation with 35,000 data fields going across, 7,500 tables, but there's actually hope here because I'm going to quote Professor Peter Aiken. Peter Aiken is an associate professor at Virginia Commonwealth University who teaches data governance, and he's also the associate director of the MIT International Society of Chief Data Officers. And what he says is 80% of all data is, and he calls it rot. It's either redundant, obsolete, or trivial. So like supply chain management, where you're just worried about the 20% of the inventory that brings 80% of the value, Here with data governance, you're worried about the 20% of the data that's giving you the value, and you're not worried about, if you're a US company and your ERP system has all kinds of fields to deal with Canadian provincial taxes. You don't need to deal with all that. Next concept I want to talk about is, what do I mean when I talk about data governance? And there are really two concepts. There's data governance and data management. And when you look at the Data Management Association, the DMBOK, the Data Management Book of Knowledge that they publish, and you look at the demo wheel here, you see data governance seems to encompass a lot of things. So what we're going to do today is we're going to separate data governance versus data management. Data management are those things that deal with how data are stored, how data are collected, how data are distributed and integrated. And really what we're talking about when we're talking about data governance is basically these four areas, where we're going to be talking about data quality, metadata, reference and master data, and data security. The big difference between data management is how do you back up your data? Where do you put it? How do you architect it? How do you get it to move there? But data governance is concerned with the content of the data. How do I know that the data are good? How do I know what the data mean? And so that's the big difference here. We're not going to talk about backup strategies. We're going to be talking about strategies for making sure the data are good, the data are available to people, and the data are secure. Okay, it didn't go forward. There we go. Whoops, it went forward twice. Love it. So the structure of a data governance organization, and my thanks to Terry Michael for this. Data governance at the top starts with a steering committee, goes down to the 5 work streams. And when you look at those work streams in green, the rest of our sessions are going to deal with these one at a time. We have information governors who are aligned with data domains, and then a number of stewards who have knowledge about the individual assets. So, this slide will be available. And then off to the side, the data governance office are the folks who are going to be a resource to everybody. So the players, the data governance office, it's led by somebody at a director or VP level. And it's the data governance interfaces with leadership, and basically, they are fire starters. They come in with the flint and steel and start up the fire. And then when that fire is roaring, they go on to someplace else and start the fire in another domain or in another area. They're the folks who are kind of like the catalyst, but they don't do the actual management. And so I have here in red, you need 2 or 3 FTEs to start, and then reassess as the program takes off. These are probably people you don't have in your organization yet. The rest of the folks I'm going to be talking about, they're in your organization, and you should be able to find them. So the Data Governance Steering Committee is comprised of the leads of the work streams, plus maybe a couple of data scientists, analytics folks, research folks, right? Because those are the folks that are going to be using the data. You really want their input. And it really should only be 2 to 4 hours of executive time per month. The work stream leads. So the work streams are led by a couple of executives, and then supported by a practice lead who probably comes from IT. And that's about 2 to 4 hours of the executive time, 8 to 10 hours for the practice lead. Data owners, and we actually didn't like the term. We used information governors because we didn't want people, this is my data. So data owners are existing managers, directors with the greatest stake in the data. You can find these all over your organization. There's one per defined data domain, and it's about a 4 to 6 hour per month task for that person. Now, we talk about the stewards. The stewards are the people who do the bulk of the work. The data stewards are people out in the business. And what we want to do is assign a set of fields to a data steward, you know, to the level where it's comfortable. The timing depends on the complexity, the quality of the data. I mean, if the data is a mess, your data steward is going to be spending a lot of time. If the data is fairly clean, probably not that much time. Application stewards are the ones who understand the application, how the data are collected, how the data move about within the application, and how the data go from the application into whatever you have for analytics, an operational data store, data warehouse, whatever it is. And then the analytics stewards are the ones who are, you know, they've been working with this data already, and they know how to report on the data. They know, you know, the where clause that you need in order to capture the right data. You know, what are the caveats around it? And they play this big role of bridging the gap between how the data are collected and worked with in a production environment and how the data are dealt with for analytics. So at this point, we're going to start with our first question and answer segment. I think we're tracking pretty well here. Any questions on the chat, Amy or Marie or Rich?
Hold on.
Not so far. It doesn't look like we have questions so far, but Rich, like Rich mentioned, please go ahead and ask questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, I got one here is, can you give us a little better definition, Ron, on the difference between a data steward and an application steward?
So yes, the data steward is the person in the business. And I was going to say this a little later in the presentation, but I'll say it now. These people are all over your organization, right? Because a vice president is going to look at a report, is going to say, hey, there's something wrong with this report. You know, hey, Margaret, go figure out what's wrong with this report. There's your data steward. So the data stewards are business people, the ones who deal with the data day to day. The application stewards are the ones, they don't necessarily deal with the data day to day. Wow, that was a tough one. Data day to day. But they do understand how the application processes that data. And that's the big difference. Data steward, business person, application steward, usually an IT person.
Okay, good.
We have one other question at this. At what point do you involve the clinical end users when building out your data governance team?
So the clinical end users are, they're going to be involved in probably a couple of ways. They might be analytics, they might be interested in research. And so they would probably sit on your steering committee. But the clinical end users are also the ones who know how to properly document the patient. I assume this is a healthcare institution that we're talking about. So they're the ones who know how to properly document the application, and they are going to probably be your data stewards. Those, you know, the manager, the nursing director, or the director of a program, that person is going to be your information governor. And then somebody at a higher level is probably going to lead the work stream. Does that answer the question?
Okay, yep, looks like it does.
Yep, it does.
Thank you very much.
Ron, when you talk work stream, what do you mean by work stream?
So that is the next topic that we're going to go into. What are the work streams? Because, you know, we've talked about the concepts of data governance. Now, what do we do? How do we do data governance? And that's going to be next. So if you can just hold on for a moment. Any other questions so far?
No, that looks like it's it.
Yep.
All right, great. Yeah, we'll have an opportunity at the end. So like I said, how do we do data governance? Well, we do it through the work streams. And each of the subsequent sessions are going to detail one work stream. So I have 5 slides here, and we'll talk about what these are in a general sense. And then each of the subsequent sessions will go into these activities. So the first one that I put here is data domain governance. And I hate the term domain because everybody, every application, every discipline, everybody uses the word domain, and everybody uses it in a different sense. So when we're talking about data governance, when we're talking about domain, we're talking about a set of data that performs a particular business function. So when we're looking at domains, we might be looking at encounters. We might be looking at patient demographics. We might be looking at lab orders as a domain. So we want to collect enough information in the domain to be able to complete a business function. The thing about domains is domains are unrelated to systems. So when you talk about lab orders, you are probably talking about, a lab system as well as a clinical documentation system. When you're talking about production, you might be looking at your production control system, and then also looking at the systems that monitor your production equipment. Think from a business sense. What data do you need to make a particular business function? And of course, we don't want a domain that, is basically everything, right? We want to break it down so that we can distribute this and not overwhelm people. The reason it's the first activity is because once you decide on a domain, you kind of run that domain through the other activities, which we'll talk about in a minute. So one of the first things you're going to want to do is find the data owners. The data owners, the people who has the most stake in the data, the people who need it the most. And then working for those data owners will be the stewards. And, I say the stewards are going to be very easy to find. You can probably name off a bunch of them in your head right now. The next activity is data strategy and policy. So what are we talking about when we talk about a data strategy? Really what we're talking about is a set of guidelines for decision making. What we're looking to do with a strategy is be able to align with whatever the analytic strategy is, and the analytic strategy itself has to align with what the business needs to know in order to get to where it needs to get to. While we're talking about a strategy that's a set of guidelines, your strategy really needs to be flexible because business needs are going to change, analytics needs are going to change, and new tools are going to come in all the time. Any tool that you have now in 2 years, you might be getting rid of. So, if your strategy involves, particular data warehouse, then you're going to have to be flexible with that. And then what follows upon the data strategy is the access policies. And I think that the access policies are really where you're going to spend the most time, because here's where we need to figure out what people are allowed to do, who's allowed to do it, how do we grant people access, and what are the policies, the procedures, how do regulatory factors come into play when you're giving people access to the data. All right, let's move on. Metadata management. I find this to be the most abstract concept, when you're talking to a group of executives. But an easy definition is it's the stuff you need to know to make the best use of your data and go out and find it. Metadata is information about the data. It includes how do you use it, how do you filter a query to make sure you're getting the right things. all of that stuff is called metadata, and it's critical, as the third bullet says, to democratizing the data. If you don't collect that data, the metadata, you're going to have a hard time democratizing, because whoever's using that data is always going to have to go to the subject matter expert. Metadata, and I attribute this to Professor Aiken as well, comes in kind of three styles. Those of you who are more technical, you know what a data dictionary is, right? The field is called admit DTM, and it's a date time field. And it's sitting in this table, in this database, and entity relationship diagrams will show you how it relates to other data. And that's the basics. The next level is the catalog. And the catalog, most vendors will produce some kind of a catalog on their data. They may call it a data dictionary, but when you have a description about what the data really means, that is what we're calling a catalog. It's the general information about the data. The high level, and the one that brings the most value, is the business glossary. And the business glossary is where you say, admission date and time is in this system, this field, this other system, this field. And it contains the admission date and time when the patient first walks into the ED. But then if the patient is actually admitted, don't use this as the admission date time, use the date and time of the admission order. And all that kind of knowledge, that is what goes in the glossary. And that's what makes the data very accessible to people. The last bullet here talks about data lineage. And this is a very important part of metadata, I believe. The books call it data lineage, and I call it data pedigree. Where did this come from? Are you making your decisions off of mongrel data, or do you know where it comes from? And data lineage really functions in two major ways. First of all, it kind of validates what you're looking at by saying it came from this. But the other way that it's really, really valuable is when you know that there's a change to how data is entered in the source system, you can perform an impact analysis and go on down and see everything, or at least hopefully most things, that use that field. One example is the SOGI effort in healthcare, right? Sexual orientation, gender identification, where your gender codes are no longer going to be male, female, and unknown. There are going to be a lot more gender codes. And with impact analysis, you could see all of the reports, all of the places that get fed. You might want to make sure that somebody's not checking for M, F, and U. Data lineage really helps when things change in the source system to avoid that breakage. So you're not scrambling to fix broken reports that are noticed by the business. Master and reference data management. This is an initially high investment, but subsequently very high payoff, and can greatly shorten your time to insight because you're taking very critical data to your business and you're managing it such that everybody can understand it and that it's consistent. So when we talk about master data, we're talking about data that relates to business entities that are critical to your business. So in a hospital, you have patients, you have places, locations, you have payers, you have providers. In every organization, you have suppliers, you have inventory, what master data is driven more by what is a business entity for you than it is by anything else. And the example that I like to give is if you look at Comcast, So in most of our businesses, address is an attribute of the patient. It's information about the patient or information about the customer or the employee, right? So it's just an attribute assigned to a person. But Comcast, address is actually master data because they are delivering service for a customer to an address. And that's the kind of phraseology that you can use to determine if it's master data. For example, a patient encounter, an encounter is transactional type of data. A patient encounter is a patient working with a provider at some location, and a procedure is performed on that patient, whatever it is, and then it's all paid for by the payer. And all of those are master data. So when you look at what comprises a transaction in your organization, those things are master data. Reference data is kind of a level down. And reference data are the job codes that you have in your organization. And with that job code, there's some information, there's the salary level, which itself is reference data. There's the description, there's the location of that job code. But there's also a lot of external reference data that comes into your organization. For example, in the HR function, there are EEO codes that are provided by the government. And the EEO codes, again, have descriptions and other attributes to them, as well as a guide on how to properly use them. So reference data is the data that you're going to use in a drop-down, but it's also data that kind of has associated data with it. And the line kind of blurs between reference data and master data at some point. The last activity is data quality management. And data quality management is initially a low investment and subsequent high payoff. It's really a good place to start your data governance effort. Find those adverse events and springboard off of those. Did you send mailings about mammography to male patients? You can probably find some adverse event that oh, hey, we have a data quality problem. Really, where data quality starts is in data profiling. And what data profiling means, it's just, hey, let's take a look at this data. We have a field here, it's called unique ID, but there's 50% duplicates in there. Ooh, we got a problem. There's a field called gender, and there's 337 different variations of codes. Okay, it looks like somebody has just been typing in male, female, and probably, MAIL instead of MALE. But profiling is a very simple activity, and it can tell you a lot about the state of your data. How complete is it? Are you missing gender codes? Are only 50% of the records having gender codes? If you're looking to do a mailing for mammography, it's not a very good data set for you. And you can move to more advanced quality analyses as you learn more about the data. What constitutes good data? For example, you could say if the birth date is in the future, or if the birth date is more than 100 years ago, then that doesn't make sense. If a pediatric visit was for somebody whose birth date was in 1961, then there's probably something wrong with that birth date. All right, a couple more slides to go through, and then we can get a little interactive here. So what? Why should I be doing this? Lack of knowledge about your data is causing inaccurate or incorrect insight. I'm going to let you think about that, because I bet you can come up with an instance in your organization where There's been inaccurate insights. Oh gosh, oh man, we included, we included these customers and we weren't supposed to include them. Poor data quality can be costing your organization reputation or business. If you keep sending mailings to gentlemen for mammography, it's lowering your organization in their eyes. How much time are people spending trying to figure out what is wrong with the data after the fact, right? We were talking earlier about the vice president who looks at a report and says, this report is wrong. Hey, Margaret, go figure out why it's wrong. Well, what we're trying to do here is, rather than Margaret spending X hours a week trying to figure out what's wrong with the data, we want to put in proactive processes, procedures, supported by some tools, where Margaret can spend hopefully less than X hours per week, making sure it's right to begin with. If you have different systems, if your business has two different customer relationship management systems, you've just acquired another business and you've acquired the system with it, very likely there's data variation. And these data variations could be causing your customers to say, boy, these guys don't know what they're doing. For one line of business, I get this, and for another line of business, it's totally different. And, giving a statistic, the last one that I saw was in the Harvard Business Review in 2016, but they estimated that bad data cost the US economy an estimated $3 trillion. In lost productivity, in extra time spent to do all of these things. So this is why you should do it. And what I'd like to do now is just start getting interactive. Section I want to call Tales from the Front, and we're going to do this with all subsequent sessions where I'm looking for people to share what stories you've had, what kind of adverse events have you seen? And if you could please raise it up in the chat, and Rich or Marie will acknowledge you, and I will unmute you.
Ron, we do
We
have
a couple of questions. Go
Okay,
ahead,
good.
Rich.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions that have come in during the talk, Ron, that I think would like to pass on to you.
Okay.
One of them is, how would you classify standard code sets that are used, like LOINC, CPT codes?
So standard code sets are reference data.
Okay.
I said that and I put a period after it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's reference data.
It's reference data.
It's not so much master data.
Okay. Very good.
And also remember, when you have reference data, you have all kinds of data that will translate CPT to SNOMED, and all of that is reference data. And as you're managing it, you're looking at how is your organization using that data. And if you're a healthcare organization, you are using that data extensively. So reference data management helps you manage that and make it available to people so that you can get better insights.
Okay.
And there is another question. What kind of investment goes into master and reference data management?
So the thing about master and reference data management, and we will get way more into this when we get to that session. But the thing about it is, we're talking about, let's start with master data. We're talking about data that is master data, right? It's critical to your business, but that data is in different systems, or it's being managed in different ways throughout your organization. And, ideally it would be managed in one place, but that's not always the case, because, you're going to find that, for example, patient, there's a lot of people, well, let me talk provider. There's a lot of people who work with provider data, and they're all working with it in different ways. So it's very legitimate. And where that investment comes in is, you have to get these people together, and you have to get them to decide, okay, who has the best address out of these 5 different systems? Who has the best address at what time? And really, there's just a lot of work getting the rules down. And then there is work in executing those rules. Again, there are a lot of master data management tools, but there's a lot of work executing those rules. But once you're done, you will find an incredible payoff where now you have a source of all information about the provider, and what used to take a week of research now basically takes a SQL query. Reference data is a little bit different, but similar in that reference data is all over the place, and especially when you're talking about standard reference data, CPT and EEO codes and commodity codes. What you're going to find is that there's many people kind of doing the same activities on that data. For the internal codes, you're going to find that different systems are using different values. And at the very least, for analytics purposes, if one system has 1 for male, 2 for female, and the other system has 1 for female and 2 for male, reference data management will say, if it comes from system A, here it is. If it comes from system B, here it is. And it will help normalize your analytics so that you don't have to code this stuff into code, and then all of a sudden it changes. Now you got to find all the code that it's in. That answer the question? All right. Anybody have a story to share?
We still got more questions,
Oh,
Ron.
more questions.
More questions, yes. One from Susanna is, I've attended many meetings where stated that because you don't like the data doesn't mean it's wrong. Do you have any comment to that?
Yes, absolutely. That is the criticality of data governance, because if you can get the person to buy into the process that governs the data, the person has nothing to say bad against it. And especially if you involve that person. So yeah, it helps against those data wars and metric wars. Your data's wrong, my data's right. Nope, you calculated the metric as 5.7 and I calculated it as 5.52. Data governance really helps that, because you're going to get that person involved in the process of determining what data quality is. And so that person's not going to be able to knock it, because it's his or her process. Keep them coming, Rich.
I think Marie has one for you.
Okay.
Yeah, Greg Francis has asked, when building a data governance program, how do you balance competing priorities between governance of data that generates organizational revenue and data that satisfies regulatory bodies / requirements?
Whew, boy. That is a very, very specific question. And, I would say that's what your steering committee is actually all about. Kick it back up to them. Let me go back up here. I don't know why. There it is. So that's the thing about the steering committee. They are the ones who are going to make the priority decisions, not the data governance office, not the stewards down below. Next question, or I hope that satisfies. If it doesn't, please just chat a follow-up.
Ron, I got one comment. I think after this, we can get into the war stories. Is from Flavia. There was when you mentioned about mammograms, there was a note that men can get breast cancer too. So it may talk about situational analysis. Comments?
So The minute I said it, I realized it. But it was an example of expending effort on a customer base that will not appreciate the effort, or expending effort on a customer base and it just decreases your the customer's vision of your company in their eyes. Can you just chat? What do you mean by situational analysis? I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Well, that was just my own comment on that.
Okay.
Is, you may want to say, if I want a particular thing going out to males on that topic, it may be a different type of message going out.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yep.
Ron, I think this goes a little bit into the war stories, but the situation, we had a situation with the women and mammogram reminders where you don't want to send out a mammogram reminder to somebody who's had a double mastectomy.
That's true as well.
And that you get a lot of unhappy people about that.
Yes.
We had that situation.
Yes. And remember, this might be a little difficult to do because that double mastectomy may not have happened at your healthcare organization either. So.
Exactly. That was from an insurer's point of view, though.
Oh,
so
okay.
they knew.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, the insurer should know and should have
and a lot of times you also have that in the EMR.
Okay. I'm having a problem here. I have somebody, and unfortunately from the chat, I can't tell who it is. Oh, Mark. Mark would like to share an experience. Mark Cesario. So I don't know.
Wonderful, Mark.
Open that up or what?
So Mark, if you could unmute, please do.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Quite well, thank you.
Very good. A couple of thoughts I had as we're in the throes of building our data governance program, and a couple of key points that we stumbled upon. One is data governance should be owned and driven by the business. That's what the literature says, and that's what we're finding. In fact, our responsibility from the IT perspective is to enable it and to make it possible, and to provide the resources to keep it moving. But the steering committee, and someone had asked that, at what point do you bring in end users? Well, you bring in the business right from the very beginning, in terms of putting together the structure, in terms of defining, your steering committee, and selecting the domains. Our job then is to make all that happen. But it's just an important note, and something that, like I said, we found it and paid attention to it in the literature going in. But it played itself out very clearly at HHC. The other is, and as a result of that, when you're pulling in business and you've got the steering committee that is primarily business, and explaining to them or asking them to serve on the metadata work stream or the metadata subcommittee, that's a good example of where there's a lot of upfront initial education that needs to take place, of educating those business leaders who are driving this system of the different components of it. So it's that happy medium in providing that education. The other is around, someone asked about the data stewards. And the data stewards, as Ron said, will emerge. I mean, when you once you've identified the domain and you've identified the metrics within that domain, the data stewards will become apparent. One of the things we need to think about is workload, because as Ron said, the data stewards do a lot of the work. And so one of the things we need to think about is selecting and assigning multiple data stewards for a given domain. So that way you could spread the responsibility for certain domains and definitions to make it, because we're not replacing their current jobs. We're asking them to do something they're technically doing now, but in a different way. But we need to be able to spread that responsibility in order to make it work. Just some thoughts.
Thank you, Mark. And before we go on to the next, I just want to let people know Mark is my colleague at Hartford Healthcare. I am kind of responsible for the tools and getting the tools running. And he is our director of data governance, who is spearheading the program and does all the interfacing with the business folks. And Mark will be presenting our next session on data domains, and that's February 17th. So thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, Ron, I think you would be good to unmute Pablo Moore. He has a response to the question on priorities.
Okay, Pablo, I've asked you to unmute.
Thank you. I'm all set, though. I was just responding to a question that Greg had regarding how to separate the data around regular data that is needed to satisfy a regulatory requirement separate from your master data. And my response is basically you would create its own separate data mart. That's the practice that we have. So we have a specific data mart to satisfy all requirements that are needed to report out to CDC, NHSN, CMS. So that's one practice that Greg can take, and all the other master data would exist in a centralized enterprise data warehouse. So just wanted to kind of share a practice that we leverage. Thank you.
Anybody else got a tale from the front?
Okay, it looks like the front's pretty quiet there, Ron.
Okay, all quiet on the Western Front. So let's wrap it up. It is 5:53. How do you get started? Data governance programs seem to take a very long time to get started. I know that at HHC we were at it for a long time before we actually got to it. And this is probably the third time I've said this, but look for the adverse events. You know, look for the thing that, whew, boy, we almost lost it on that one. And see how data figured into that adverse event. It was actually a near miss that got HHC, our master data management system, in our provider domain. Look to your analytics initiatives. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I can count on way more than my hands and toes how many analytics initiatives failed because the data aren't collected, or the data aren't collected consistently, or the data are a mess, or the data are in 25 different places. And that tends to happen in healthcare with healthcare EMRs because, you know, the data you're looking for could be in diagnosis, it could be in family history, it could be in surgical history, it could be in problems. And, you know, these are all things that have made analytics initiatives fail. And of course, look to your business initiatives because, you know, in a, I hate the term data-driven organization. I prefer the term insight-driven organization. But in a data-driven organization, the business is going to want to measure the effectiveness of the initiative. Do you have the data? Are you collecting the data? Are you collecting the data correctly? Do you need a data literacy program? And so these are places to look, and it's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen probably in a year, but you know, when enough of these build up, the justification happens. So I'd like to give some acknowledgments. Terry Michael from ClearSense, Mark Cesaro, who you just heard from, and also the Gartner Group and Data Management Association. You know, I don't like to you know, use other resources without at least acknowledging that I did use other resources. So I thank you all very much, the folks, and as well as the folks that helped moderate this call, Rich, Marie. And if you want to get in touch with me, yes, that's the name. Yes, that is the correct spelling. That's the best that the French missionaries could do with the Native American name. And that's my email address, just without the apostrophe, at hhchealth.org. So do we have any final?
Hey,
Go ahead.
Ron, yeah, Bruno here. I was wondering if you could share with the group what the plan is for the sessions that follow and what to expect and how they'll build.
So the remainder of the sessions, I mean, we glanced over the activities, the data domain management, master domain. The remainder of the sessions, each session is going to drill down specifically on that subject area. And that will take us through June. You know, this is the purpose of the sessions. This was a quick introduction, but when we talk about the activities and the work streams, you know, we need to delve a lot deeper to figure out how to do these and, you know, to relay information and relay stories on how we've done them.
Great.
And Ron, there was a question on whether or not at some point in time, you're going to do an appendix slice on your preferred terms in terms of information governors, data owners, insight versus data.
I could, I mean, should I do that now?
I think, I'm not sure, the person asking that, maybe they can, Gates,
Yeah,
maybe they can
unmute
unmute
yourself.
themselves and ask.
Yeah, just unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, you were throwing out some great terms there, like the information governor over data owners, right? And for someone starting out, it'd be good to get those kind of tips, things that you've experienced and that you do. You know, it could be a summary at the very end of these 6 sessions, you know, because I don't know if you're going to throw out 2 every session or something, but whatever, you know, that might be helpful.
Okay.
You know, like I specifically got information governors over data owners. That was great. Makes sense, right? Because you want to avoid battles, right? Great. Yep. And then the last one, you just used insight versus data. I forgot exactly what it was. You didn't like.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talk about a data-driven organization.
Right.
And I don't like that because data is what it is.
Yep.
Data doesn't tell you anything.
Yep.
You need to use data to derive insights. And just as your data needs to be good, the logic for your insights also needs to be good.
Absolutely.
you know, you can't develop a dashboard or you know, create a query to try to get the information that you want. You need to have integrity in your insights. And so, you know, I believe that data is a means to the end, but the real end are the insights that you get, you know, by having the right people, by having very clear expectations. And so
Yep.
this is why I say, you know, it's not a data-driven organization, it's an insight-driven organization.
Yeah, but those are just two examples today that are gems, you know, so be
Thank you
good to
very
have.
much.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for sharing them.
Any more questions come up on the chat?
Yeah, there's about how and when the recordings will be available. I don't know, maybe Katie can give a review on that because I'm not quite sure how that's done.
Yeah,
I was going to say the slides and the recordings will be sent out after each of these sessions within 24 to 48 hours, including a link and a passcode for the recording.
All right, let me send you the latest slide deck because I did make some tweaks between 3 and 4 o'clock. Okay, if there are no more questions, then we can end the meeting. The next meeting is on data domain management. And as I said, Mark Cesaro will be presenting. And it will be February 17th at 1700 hours, 5 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ron. This was fantastic. Really appreciate the effort that went into pulling it together.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, good night, everyone.
thank you.
Good night, all.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Okay.
Trying to quit the meeting and it's not quitting on me. There we
Oh.
go.
Let me get